chill, no, I mean, it's going to be conversational. We just happen to be all right. And 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the podcast. My name's Mike Ouren, and I am really excited that we are a group of us here that you see on the screen starting a podcast. This is our first episode, so bear with us. And we are going to be talking about a couple of topics today. But before we do that, let's introduce everyone. Let's go from the left side of the country to the right side of the country. How about that? We'll start with you, Sura. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Sura Hadi. Really excited to be here.
Thank you for joining us. This was an idea that just sort of happened from all of us talking with one another. Jeff, thank you
Nagle.
for joining.
Yeah, my pleasure. Jeff Nagle joining you from smack dab in flyover country at your service.
Central time zone, right?
No, Eastern.
Oh, you are Eastern. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Elizabeth?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Elizabeth Rodziewicz, and I'm joining from Canada. So very happy to be here.
Fantastic. Well, we've got all but the Central time zone covered with our team here. And maybe in future episodes, we may have guests. We're still working through that, but we're going to have the four of us as hosts and talk through some interesting subjects. I think for anyone that knows any of us, we're in the life science business today, but we've also spanned different industries throughout our careers. And not all of our discussions are going to be around our background, right? We're going to go off topic probably frequently. And I'm actually looking forward to that. I think we will have some, the reason we assembled is I think we all want to have some great conversations and talk through things. So we're going to keep it relaxed. And one of the topics we have today and we were thinking about is, and I used to work in the industrial robot space, but it's why haven't industrial robots gotten any traction really in recent years, even though they've had many opportunities? Why haven't industrial robots really never taken off in life science research? I've seen them more in production applications, right? In diagnostics in some cases. And more recently, I've seen them in cell culture, right? Cell culture, I think it's Solaris, company out of the Bay Area, building up these large-scale automated cell culture systems for personalized medicine, things like that. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Jeff? What are the things that really get in the way for people to adopt these things?
Yeah, well, having done a project with a 6-axis Epson previously, using a scheduling software, working through the company that we had an embedded team, I think part of the biggest issues we had was the complexity surrounding that. When we talk about robots and how many axes and degrees of freedom they have, and the precious cargo that the life science industry actually carries, we're carrying things that need to stay planar constantly forever. And there were those moments when singularity happens and the next thing you know, your labware is upside down. Therefore, said precious cargo, the next billion-dollar drug or agricultural product, is upside down all over the tabletop, which now is not good. So that's one of the biggest struggles we had was how do we integrate that? So when you think about the customer base that you're having to deal with, they are not engineers. They're classically trained scientists in the biologicals, the chemicals, those types of things. And they don't really want to, or they shouldn't need to, work on getting these robots to function as properly they should. So I think that's one of the biggest hurdles, to be honest with you.
So who would have known that the singularity as near would apply to your day-to-day work?
Exactly.
And so you've been on both sides of the equation as on a solution provider and as well as a user. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely want to, echo what Jeff is saying. I think it's really hard when it comes to not only integration into the workflows that we work on in the biopharma, biotech space, but also the integration of the software and the machines themselves, it's very difficult to have that leverage in the space that doesn't prolifically use it. You know what I mean? Like the systems are made so that they have their own sort of software that you can access independently. And when you try to integrate them to something like a scheduler or something like a work cell that is toggled into different peripheral pieces, it's really hard to make that translation robust. You have to be very innovative as a engineer on site, and you have to work with a vendor that can actually leverage that. Luckily, we've had really great relationships with vendors, but that takes a lot of time. And the space doesn't have a lot of time to waste, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're spending more time, on a particular device than maybe you have to. In some cases, it's like, and that was, I remember that from when I was working with 6-axis robots on a day-to-day basis. It's like some applications would go smooth, and I had experience, right? And then other ones, I'm just like spending all this time trying to get a trajectory to work or something like that. When if all you need is pick and place, then that's all you need. And Elizabeth, I remember when I worked for a 6-axis robot manufacturer, I remember seeing a green version of a robot from Redasoft. It was a very early, one of the early implementations of a 6-axis robot actually in the industry from Redasoft. So tell me about that.
Yeah, we did several of those before that implementation, and Sura is very familiarized with that implementation. So one thing I was going to say is the deployment of an application like that using an industrial robot takes so much longer than just using a collaborative robot nowadays. So we have reduced the time of implementing the entire system, as well as all the other things that come along with it, that is safety, the approvals from the actual company to get a setup like that, which was in terms of footprint also takes a lot of space in the lab. And all of those components have driven the labs to redesign what they want to use in the lab to utilize the space a lot better. I would say the footprint, it's very expensive right now as well. Labs have become smaller, so you cannot have an industrial setup where you can actually minimize the space, the footprint, and also make it deployable very quickly. So it's kind of installed, and then the user is ready to start working with it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, there's always like a counterintuitive use of a sphere inside of a box, right? That's what I need to access things that are vertical in nature, yet and I need to go in and out of each one of them. So I need a certain amount of translational headroom. And then I'm stuck with this, okay, well, at the top of the work envelope, you can't go in and out of the hotel. And at the bottom of the work envelope, same thing. And so in the middle, you're in the sweet spot. But again, the robot, we would refer to it as elbow room, the literal robot version of elbow room. A lot of fun stories of 6-axis robots in our industry when you're talking about $250,000 instruments next to them.
Exactly.
How's your echo working upside down? Oh, very interesting. That's very clever.
Yeah, and we had experience that unfortunately a movement went wrong and it hit a really expensive piece of equipment, or even the robot, the gripper, we needed to change parts after that. So it could become really expensive, as if you're controlling a different type of robot, more easy and collaborative. Then you minimize the risk of these things happening. So for integrators, for lab users, it makes more sense to go with something that is user-friendly.
But I think there's an opportunity there, right? I think, there are a lot of powerful things on the industrial side that if we can bring into automation easily, we could leverage it, quite robustly. It's just the fact that interface takes a lot of work to set up, that once you start it, you kind of are locked into, okay, now I'm going to use it because I've initiated deployment in this lab, right? But then initiating deployment for another lab, for another workflow, you have to go through that, like what I like to call activation energy again to redo the process.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a place where we can collaborate on both ends to really deploy these across both fields. It's just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on something Elizabeth had mentioned about
Sure.
sort of the safety thing. When you look at, again, talk about the industry that's being served here, they aren't experts in safety. Now, if you look at manufacturing spaces, they have whole teams who are dedicated to safety, and they know that stuff inside and out. But when you're asking a life science technology company to become sudden experts in safety, well, that's a whole new ballgame. I remember even when we've deployed collaborative robots, there was some trepidation on, we don't know enough about this. I'm saying it'll hit you and you'll be fine. But even so, they're like, I don't know. So they didn't know these things, and no one's going to teach them. It's not their forte. So, yeah, you'd have to put up this massive amount of shielding, cages, the whole 9 yards. So it gets much, not aside from the activation energy that Sura had mentioned, there's a cost associated with all of that stuff, and that drives the cost of projects through the roof.
Exactly.
True. I like that phrase, activation energy, because that's so true across this whole industry of not just robots, but devices, right? The amount of effort required to get one device versus the next online, working with a piece of software connected to the entire system, or the part that I am as far from as I think there's anyone here, because I'm not dealing with the integration side as much, but it's the data connection, right? I mean, all these topics, Elizabeth knows this really well, right? In the SLAS committee meetings, right? I mean, these are topics that come up quite often, is standardization, whether it's data or control or management of the two together. All those things, we've had different attempts, and maybe SELA is that's another topic, right? I mean, all the some of the standardized environment. Yeah, it's like, do you have? I've gotten that question. About, is it a SELA driver for the robot? It's like SELA wasn't really designed for robots. Robots are unique. It's a unique control scheme. I mean, SELA was more for, how do I tell this instrument, talk to it in a standardized way? And I guess, but Sura brings up a really good point about standardization that can come from the industrial space, which needs to happen more. I agree. There are great standards driven by the automotive industry, right, that are not utilized in where we are. And there's nothing to say that it's not like, these can only work with robots that toss engine blocks. No, there's no rule that says that. So you can use these with any type of robotic mechanism. It's just hasn't really been applied. I mean, I've seen robots in our industry actually controlled by an Allen Bradley Slick PLC. I mean, It's possible, right? It's not ideal, but it does, but that's a standard. Anyone, I could probably call up at any given time 200 programmers for that PLC, right, for a simplistic control scheme. But yeah, anyway, I'm diverging. But yeah, I mean, I think the industrial robots could bring. It's more the industrial environment, I should say, can bring new thoughts to the industry. So.
Well, I think that's a prevailing attitude, and that's such a bad word, though. But it's kind of the prevailing thought process, probably a better word, in the environment of life science is, well, my process is unique. Well, yes and no, both in the same question or at least that statement. Yes, that what you're searching for is data, which is unique to you, but how you get there is not so unique. You still need to move a plate to a liquid handler. You still need to extract that liquid out, put it in some sort of reader, the steps through the process. It's just a sequence of events. And when you look at industries outside of our space, they've done sequences of events for decades, and they are doing it really, really well. They understand what a process genuinely means. And I think over the course of time, it's going to happen that the research industry is going to start to have to shift their thinking of, we need to be in a production mindset, not where we're talking about making pills, but the research in and of itself. I mean, we could get into other topics at a different episode for like AI and what that's going to play into it. But they're going to have to think of themselves as production houses with production data generation, those types of things. So that's going to have to flip for them to get larger, fill the pipeline essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think building on that, and that's definitely something that I see that needs to happen, is the prevailing thought of most people in research labs as they get their degree, get focused on what they want to do, and get into a company, is to get to that end result, right? This is what I'm trying to achieve in this goal. In my mind, coming from the automation engineering background, it's really important to have an automation engineering team. And what I'm seeing as I go into this tangent lately is those teams getting dissipated or culled, right? So that the focus is more on the science. But now you have scientists trying to do automation that don't necessarily have the background or the expertise of having deployed many systems or many workflows, or like myself and Mike and everyone really on this call, having gone to a lot of these vendor shows where they've seen the industrial robotics and what they can do, and they've seen what the laboratory automation can do, and they can bridge that innovation in their mind to deploy these systems that can be utilized for this purpose. So I think as companies grow in that mindset, they also need to really challenge themselves to retain these teams that not only know their science, but know automation and can bring those together and be fruitful, rather than, letting those groups go.
Well, that presents a question. Sorry, Mike. That presents a question to me of, do these companies, when they realize, they start to think of themselves as, well, we're a science company. We don't really need that group because the systems are already set up. But then 10, God forbid, 15 years down the road, that system is, while it's still running, congratulations, but your technology gap is huge.
But I challenge that. It's not.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree
years.
with you.
It's like a month later or a week later, something comes up, because we don't try to teach a scientist how to be an automation engineer, right? We teach them the program and minor modifications. And if you're really doing your job well, you really have like a GUI that walks them through what they need to do. So they don't really have to have those skill sets as part of their toolbox, right? Yeah. So if we're not there and they're trying to figure it out, that's like a week or two before you run into a hurdle. And then what do? You get into the space, like you were saying, where now you're using an outdated system to try to do something it's not intended to do. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this.
No,
absolutely.
It's great.
I'm totally
I think we all are. It's like you see, and you were saying, so like would you say that like the industry is kind of this oscillation of in-house capability going up and down? Would you say that's been the case? Because you kind of mentioned that it was maybe, we're kind of justifying out the need to have these resources in some ways, or at least maybe there's some sales pitches going on where it's like, well, no, it's good. The software, you're covered, right? We don't need to do that. I mean, would you say there, because I feel like there's been an oscillation in a lot of areas of our industry, including the types of hardware that are being used, machine design, and as well as instrument design, but that's one I never really thought of before. It's like, are the resources getting thinned out?
I mean, I've been in this industry now going on 24 years. I think me and you guys really were at this founding of automation coming into biotech, right? What I'm seeing lately is this need to justify the need for an automation group, or, after they've deployed these processes. And the first time was last year when I started seeing companies really dissipate their departments focused in this area and outsourcing or using consultant agencies to bring those people in. So those people are terrific, experts in their own field, but they don't know your science the way your automation engineers do. And they certainly don't know your systems that they built themselves, right? So I'm seeing that trend, as you were saying, where now the automation engineers aren't in-house as much at these big name companies that have multi-million-dollar operations, right? And they don't have a dedicated team, or their team is so thin and so stretched thin across different projects it's not delivering as much value as it could be. But I think when you build a company and you know that's where you want to go, you have to have automation in mind from the beginning, because you can build in many different directions. And the only company that I've seen really focused on that was, what Resilience did, which, they thought of it from the beginning, which was great. But I won't go into that.
That's a very, very good point. And I remember
Try and try again. I mean, we're going to see other companies, I think,
and
go
we've
that
seen
direction. I
through-
mean, it's just,
We've
Go
seen
ahead,
through the
Elizabeth.
years, from my perspective, is I've seen a lot of groups being dissolved, just like you're mentioning, and it's really frustrating because then all the systems that they're setting up and they're working on, they are left without really anyone to support them internally, and it's hard for an external vendor that doesn't know the science, like you mentioned, Sura. It really it becomes a difficult process to get somebody on board, caught up with everything and all the plans, and it's a loss for the company too. I would imagine as a management, you don't want to see all that investment gone through just being there collecting dust, as we say it. But another thing that we were at SLAS in Europe, there was a discussion about are there any programs in universities that are teaching laboratory automation, because there's automation programs, of course, but laboratory automation is a niche, and it's different than the normal automation that we're used to seeing in manufacturing and industrial automation. So what is out there? And I think SLAS and LREG groups are trying to incorporate this together with academic labs or academic other universities to see where are there certifications or programs that they can go, people that are interested to get in this industry. And as part of the industry, we should push for that, because I think as the more we can get talent that is trained to do this kind of job, then they will just come in and just get all the benefits that we are implementing right now with the technology and robotics, going back to the robotics.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent point.
I think what you see a lot of, and this happens often, it happened in some of my past lives, was, to Sura's point, departments that are strictly engineering get severed. See ya, you put this thing together. Then the company says to the scientist, who's not thinking in that way, can you manage that? And they're suddenly cast into this role of scientist / automation engineer / researcher. Talk about a lift. That is difficult, because if something goes sideways, to Sura's point, I don't know enough about this. I could click the run button, and I don't mean to marginalize it, but I could click the run button. But I always had a team that would back me up. But now that's gone. So now they're now on another learning curve type of thing. So it makes it so challenging. And I think when we talk about standardization, we know that from a industrial automation, when a line is down, that is dollars that are just being burned, basically. And I don't think our industry sees it that way.
No, it doesn't get near the appreciation.
No, it doesn't. No. And if
you explain it, it might.
Yeah, but if you showed hard dollars, hey, did you know that when you're not running that machine or that system for the next 3 weeks, that's $10,000 a day in research you're missing out on, or whatever.
That's what I started pivoting towards, is actually putting it in dollars, right? Because if you're trying to do a drug discovery system and you try to show, well, this is the amount of time the machine is down and this is what you're losing while it's down, it starts to click. But I still don't see that importance that you see in the other industries, like you were saying, Jeff. It hasn't been kind of digested fully,
Has anyone genuinely showed them, though? That's the thing.
Have you noticed that lately in the industry there's a tendency to try to accommodate to the end user scientist with products that are using AI, and it's like you input your normal text and the system will adapt, which is great because it makes it easier for the user. But to what we were discussing before is, are we trying to eliminate the need of automation engineers in the lab that are actually very capable of utilizing all these different tools in the automation world, that, you know, robotics and different types of technology that is already being used in the other industries, but we are not implementing not at all. Like,
or the non-physical world. There's a lot of things that Siri can do if it's not a physical world thing, right? But as soon as we start getting to the physical world, I find a lot of these interpreters and predictive things, it's like, well, yeah, if you predict wrong now you're going to see the mistake, you know? I mean, it's kind of like, I feel like there's it's not really overselling. I think it's just, it's maybe
overinflated, maybe.
Overinflated. That's well said. Okay, that's a better way to put it. It's overinflated of, oh, look at what you can do, and then when you actually get down to it, the balloon is much smaller, and I think that tends to, well, that's distracting. Let's just put it that way, right? I mean, if you're doing a process and you're trying to get somebody from point A to point B, that's like a deviation. That's like off route, as far as I'm concerned. Now, it may get you in a better direction ultimately, but it's like, too much of that in the especially in the early discussion is distracting for what actually needs to get done, in my opinion. That's what I it's like talking about a robot without talking about the gripper, is to put it in my word.
Exactly. But I think Elizabeth has a good point. There's uses for it, right? And I think it's funny, because we were talking about it the other day, how when we were trying to set up automation in labs like 23 years ago, people were afraid of automation because they didn't want to lose their jobs, right? But now that we're talking about AI, everyone's excited, and I'm just like, this could also cause you to lose your job.
This will legitimately take your job.
This will legitimately do it because it's not the physical world. But there's a place for it, and I think there's investment and a way to actually think about it to make it useful, but it's not instead of, it's in addition to, right? It's another tool that we can leverage, and I think there's too much thought on this is going to do all of this, right? When it's
the magic bullet.
It's not really a magic bullet. Yeah.
No, I think it's and companies look in the big defense. They are looking at things more strategically, and I think it's a good pivot point to talk about sort of looking at new technologies, new methodologies at a corporate scale, at a large scale, to see if they fit around the business. And I mean, we do that all the time. How many times do you see ads for CRM software, changing your business, or lead generation for sales organizations, all this stuff? When it comes to capital equipment, it's not that prolific. It's like, it's just like, you got this, a silo and that silo. But when you look at it at the right level in a company, you can see all this stuff at once and consider it all at once. And one area that I've, has become more of a thing. I mean, last time at the SLAS floor, I think there were upwards of 12 or 13 MoMas, mobile manipulators, on the show floor. That's up about 500% from the previous year. And I'm expecting we'll see the same at SLAS in San Diego coming up here in 2025. If there's any differing opinions on that, let me know. But I mean, I have inside information.
I'm just happy you're all coming to San Diego.
We are too. It was the weather will be great. It was great last week. It'll be great again in January. Way cool, way better than, I was about to say way cooler than Boston, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. That doesn't work. But yeah, so maybe Jeff, start with you on this one. The mobile manipulator. We've seen it's come from different directions. I've seen it from integrators. I've seen it from actual robot manufacturers, and I've seen them actually working in labs. In some of the cases, right? There's some installations out there. And what are your thoughts on all that? Like in terms of the user experience, and we were just talking about like what you need to know to use equipment, right? Does the MoMa take that does that stretch the capabilities of an organization even more, or can that be kind of kept in the bounds of usefulness?
Well, it's funny this topic comes up today because I had a meeting with one of these manufacturers today, and I think what you're going to see is, and I've been leaning on some of the customers as well to say, you have to understand what is it, the process that you're genuinely trying to integrate or shove this robot into. I've seen mobile robots used in a different application. It was more for overnight security. In case there were lone operators, these robots would meet you and say, who are you? Give me your badge, blah, blah, blah. Different thing altogether. But in about 6 weeks, those were gone. So, they have to think about the genuine process that they're trying to fit this device into. And again, we talked about cost previously. Genuinely, what is the return on that investment? If it took the robot 3 times longer to get a rack of plates from point A to point B than what you kept doing it, then where's the return on investment? It's never going to happen. Yes, the person can go do value-added activities, but I guess if you're talking about overnight activities, but again, the customer base doesn't see themselves as a 24/365 type operation till they start.
Which I think
that
is a whole
mindset.
different discussion on top of
That's a whole
that.
different
That's
discussion.
another podcast.
Yeah,
That's a whole nother episode right there.
But
Episode
they-
number 2.
Again, if they realize what are these tasks that I'm asking this thing to do, and if it's a genuine, hey, this is really value for us to get that done for longer periods of time, then there's some value there. But they really need to calculate what the ROI is going to be on these things. In addition to that, is what else can it do beyond just picking a plate from here and taking it over to there? I always stress hey, let's think about the future. If you're going to have machines, you can't starve those machines. Otherwise, you're just going to have people in the labs feeding them machines all day. Well, can that robot now feed your machines? Resources, inputs, all that kind of stuff to keep this process moving. I don't think labs are thinking about that far ahead.
Okay. Yeah. And Elizabeth, you see inquiries about them, right? I mean, because they need to be able to manage these devices in a lab, and they need to be able to integrate them as part of a workflow. But now you've got this sort of driving technology, literally, that's driving the workflow now, moving around the building, not just moving around one corner of the lab. Do you see any like common roadblocks in that process that come up, or?
It is very interesting to see that everybody's requesting and looking to implement the new technology. I mean, if you go to Automate conference, you have mobile robots everywhere. They follow you everywhere. It's for every kind of application, I would say, outside of lab automation. For us, it's something new, which there needs to be some education for people that are in the lab that want to have those robots, because it's not that simple as just having, something else moving in the lab. There's so many considerations, and I've been hearing about, do you need to integrate it with the data management system? Does it need to follow something that input from a LIMS system? Do you need integration with, other software, as well as do you have a Wi-Fi available in the entire building? Where are your points of you're going to lose connection and your robot is going to be stuck? Or are people in the lab ready for having a robot that, if you put an obstacle, a box, something that you drop and nobody noticed, and the robot is going to be stuck there, lost the battery, the robot cannot do much until the next day. So you have a whole night that you've lost productivity because the robot is not working. So there's so many things that are involved, even the doors. Does the robot have to go through doors?
It's multi-levels, elevator automation.
I was thinking that, I didn't think of that myself until I was talking to some of these vendors that were saying you need to have sliding doors rather than swinging doors. You're going to go into a elevator. Do you have any bumps on the floor that the robot can get stuck, or have any, because you want it to be as stable as possible, as well as it is carrying very important samples with it. So all these
Enclosure, right? That's been a big topic about mobile robots. Is just having the plates open, or does it need to have an enclosure, internal storage mechanism, carousel? Yeah,
yes.
this has definitely been coming up.
Yeah, it does take a learning process, I guess, for vendors and even mostly the users that are evaluating all these solutions that are now in the market. But what questions do they need to ask? So it will be great if we can have someone also in another podcast that can bring, like, what is the checklist for a manufacturer that they need to answer. You need to get answers from the vendors. I mean, from the users to consider: is your lab ready to automate? In this case, the mobile robots, to integrate with those.
Yeah. Very good points.
And if you're cutting your automation staff, I'm going to say, no, you're not ready for these types of industrial robots.
We want to go mobile, but
We got no one to control it.
Yeah, that's right. We want to weld a bunch of parts, but we don't have any welders. It's all for the robot. It's all for the robot. Yeah. It is there are applications I see that are for both robot mounted on the mobile platform or just a mobile platform, right? There are applications, I think, in both areas. I think the MoMa, the mobile manipulator, has gotten more press time. That's just because what we're used to with robots is in handling plates and handling samples is exactly that. A robot not doing that is more of just a kind of a logistical transport or something like that. But one thing to think about is the warehouses out there, the online shopping companies. I mean, the number of just standard mobile robots, high speed in some cases, some are just, nominal speed out there, way eclipses, any kind of manipulator attached to a mobile platform. But, I could see that change. But again, the expertise and the onboarding has to be there to be able to do it. Have you seen any mobile platforms that, or projects that stand out to you in terms of, not getting specific, but just, stand out to you in terms of having the potential for a mobile?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of thought around it. Like Jeff was saying, I think people want to use it, but you really have to understand what you're going to use them for. And right now, it just doesn't make sense for a lot of workflows. Like you can put plates and carry them yourselves much faster than you can have this machine kind of toggled on to do it. And I haven't seen any high impact that it delivers yet that I personally would bring it into a lab. It has to be the right application. And I think where I have seen it, it's been operations that have run overnight. And even then, it's a lot of the issues that Elizabeth described in terms of when it's not being monitored, when there aren't any humans around, it could get stuck, things can happen, samples can get lost. And so as an automation engineer, you have to program for those possibilities so that error codes and messages get sent out adequately to recover. And then you still need an on-call person to do that. So I think that there exists a space for it. I just haven't seen it yet being utilized in the way that, it promises. You know what I mean?
I got you. I've got an anecdotal story, kind of feed on what Elizabeth talked about, robots getting stuck. I have a robotic mower, and I put it in the front yard.
Oh, those are fun.
I put it in the front yard, but I have a fence that kept it from its charging station. So it would run. I forgot about it, went to bed. The thing was dead right by the fence because it kept trying to get back into the charge station, and it was dead.
I know where I gotta go.
I know where I'm going, but you don't want me to get there. So it died.
Too bad it doesn't have eyes so it can look sad.
I know.
All dressed up and nowhere to go. Yeah, that was your poor robot.
That have the screen with the eyes and everything, so you can almost feel like it's a human robot.
Well, it's like the ones that you see at dentists and doctors' office for the kids, where they have those crescent eyes. Yeah. It's just so cute.
Something that got
Yeah.
my attention is when talking to one of these vendors now that uh, to implement a mobile robot, he was saying that it's for them it's important to partner with a construction company that can help the lab redesign or build to accommodate the mobile robots. And that was something I never thought about as
True.
well, that as an integrator, maybe you want to also partner up with some companies that can help accommodate, knowing exactly what the application is for, so they can make sure that there's enough space, the corridors, and there's nothing on the floor that can interfere with the robot, and build the lab to get it ready for mobile robots. But that is a little bit far away from what we are now. Now we are hearing all these comments about there's no space, we need to build up rather than, have bigger systems. And I wonder how the mobile robots will get into that kind of spaces right now.
So are you saying,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, we have to become experts in feng shui? I just got to know. Whatever I need to put on my name for LinkedIn, expert in feng shui.
I think that's another episode, really,
And that
right?
is
How to design.
Is-
Not the feng shui. Very good point. But I was thinking, we could totally do a whole episode on the right way to design an automation lab. Right?
Sure.
I
Because-
was thinking about
Yeah.
that too when I heard
with or
about it.
without mobile robots. I mean, there's a lot
I have a
to
lot
be
of
said
thoughts
there.
on this.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yes, that got me thinking quite a bit. There is a lot
I
of
think
work to do.
episode number 3, automation work.
You writing
And
this
what I
down?
always say with
Duly noted.
all the activities that we do, and together with SLAS, LRAG, and everything that we are promoting, I'm involved with, is education. What can we bring
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
educate people? Not really just to sell them something. They need to be educated and make the right decision based on the right information that they can get. So this was great to experience, to be, talking to different vendors, seeing what what questions they ask, as well as, the user, what do you need? What do you want to achieve? And like Jeff said before, what do you see in the future of your lab? What does that look like?
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many, the alternatives too. When we start talking about architecting labs and architecting spaces, I can't wait to get on the subject of these alternative transport technologies, like the highway system, the tracks, the conveyor belts, the rovers. There's we can go down the list. Some of these, the Venn diagram is pretty thin overlap with mobile manipulators, and I think other ones maybe a bit more. But I think they often just get thrown into one bin, one hopper of these are next generation transport technologies, which, it's some are highly inflexible and some are maybe too flexible, right? Flexibility you'll never use. But that would be an interesting discussion. So yeah,
Well,
let's do another one on that.
we have seen Boston Dynamics Spot Robot open doors, not slide doors,
Yeah.
but handled doors.
Yeah.
And you can put
It's a
all sorts of stuff on the backs of those. I'm wondering if our industry shouldn't look to the Spot. Then bring your dog to work day. Every day.
I think a Boston. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, doesn't it? This kind of goes back to the question of flexibility, right? I feel like a lot of people get really excited about the things that robots can do that are out there, but it's do you really need a finger, a hand on a robot that's just going to grab it? There's other ways
Right.
to do it without doing it that way, but
Yeah.
because it's so exciting,
True.
people are leaning there, and that's where you do need an expert to just tell you you can do that or you cannot do that and just do it just as well,
I don't care if we can do it. Buy one immediately.
No, I want to see a hand with my tube.
I want that in my lab immediately. We have budget for it. Forget about all this other stuff.
And make it glow.
If you're into the innovation part, I would say absolutely. Try it and give feedback to other users. Get some papers out and kind of try different
Right.
applications. If you can afford to do that, and there are groups in many companies that are specifically appointed for that. find the most innovative thing, try it out, and if it doesn't work, well, but the idea is to try the new technology. So I think that it's a great thing. And on the other side is if you are, with a certain budget, you really need to define your workflow,
Right.
what your goals are, what you want to achieve with it, and then make the best use of your funding at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think R&D, especially for, larger companies can afford to do it, but I mean, I wish that more would do it, is to have a true R&D lab where it's all experimental stuff. You might run some real science in there when you get to a point where it makes sense, but a lot of it needs to be around exploring these technologies to familiarize, and then it makes the shopping process a lot easier, I think.
That would be a fun company.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And if you say to the
All
company,
right, nobody heard that. We'll keep that to
We're
ourselves.
starting it? Is that what you're saying?
I see it's now called the Four Founders Podcast. Okay, fantastic.
Ooh,
We went
I
from
like that.
unnamed.
First episode was never released, and they never
You're
did
listening
another
to
one
the Four
again.
Founders Podcast. What does that mean? Well, we
We're
don't
about
know.
to find out.
But we'll find out at the same time as you.
No, I
Yeah,
think
well,
if you had those R&D sort of skunk works, if you will, laboratory
Yeah,
types,
skunkworks.
where
Yeah.
and then they come out and they say, "Oh, you asked to reduce your research cycle 2 years. I need 2 years off the research cycle." We did it. Well, what did you do? Come here, I'll show you. And then it's a matter of, wow, okay, there's my return on the investment. 2 years off a research cycle is huge. And I know where I came from in a
idea.
past life, that was an initiative from the chief of R&D. I need 2 years off my research cycle. Okay, that's a
Yeah.
big order. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Interesting.
yeah, I got you. Well, another one that's going to be interesting to watch coming up, speaking of future technologies, is SLAS is going to have their first future zone. I don't know exactly what, I can't, do you remember exactly what it's
I
called?
think it's called Nexus.
Nexus.
They
Oh,
changed
good.
the name. Yeah, they
Nexus.
just recently.
It's not Lab of the Future.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
That's been used too many times, right?
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I made a list, it would be 10 pages long. Of Lab of the Future.
We will kill that name at the next
Please
podcast.
stop it. Don't worry. Future will not be in the name of this podcast.
Today.
Nexus. Okay, good. No, I'm looking forward to that, to see how that. It's a tough thing, right? When you've got, the different. It's a vendor exhibition, right? How do you present that? Bring all that together, but. If anyone can do it, they can, I think, as an organization. It's so focused on automation. But we'll see. That's coming up end of January, SLAS, for anyone who's listening that doesn't know. Just go to slas.org. Not advertising for them, but I think it is an important show.
I mean, you can meet us live. That's incentive enough.
Exactly.
right?
We're recording live from out front of the San Diego Convention Center, in front of the
Part of our
Gaslamp
podcast.
District. That's right. We'll rent a space across the street at that
At a pub?
restaurant. At that restaurant, you rented out, Elizabeth, for your
Yeah,
event.
that's a very
That'd be
nice
pretty
spot.
awesome. that would be the spot. Vino included.
Vino must be included, yes. But that reminds me of what Elizabeth said earlier in terms of there is the resources to kind of build up future people in this field, right? I feel like it is coming a lot from vendors like SLAS and, Biomech does really good like liquid handling session when they come to town. I think a lot more of the people that are experts in the field need to sign up or initiate some of these classes. I've never done one. I think it's really good to kind of put all of your thoughts together and teach the next generation. I know at my last company, I built standards and best practices that really helped junior engineers. And those are things that I think we don't think of when we're, nose to the wheel grinding at our companies day by day. But the vendors do because it's their business. So I think it's important for us to take a step back and think.
That's a good point.
empower the newer the
Teaching
younger
sessions.
generation. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really, because that's the perfect meeting point to capture those possibilities, and these are the kinds of things that in our committee meetings, Elizabeth, right, that have come up about, what else, what other opportunities are there for engagement? That's certainly another one. I mean, some of them there are sessions like that, but I think there's a whole list of topics that don't get covered, just because it's maybe a particular part of science is a hot topic that year, right? And they want to talk about that, and they'll make sessions for that. But even the really basic stuff, right? When you get down to robotics and pipetting workflows and things like that, which are not basic. I'm not I'm not going to sit there and trivialize. Don't get me wrong.
Did you see the look on my face?
I am
Sura
not
went white. She's like,
trivializing.
I don't believe you just said that.
Did he just trivialize pipetting workflows? No, that's I'm trivializing robotics workflows, but in terms of the whole approach to it and how to make it approachable from the beginning, right? Or how to approach it from the beginning is a better way to say it. So, yeah, I think that would be great. And it's completely optional if anyone wants to participate in the picks of the week this week, since we didn't forecast it. But does anyone have a pick of the week? Could be anything. Technology, software.
Well, if we watch the podcast back, I think there's a lot of topics here that we can expand more.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but definitely there is a lot to think about. Even I think with SLAS, in going back to that, like the short courses that they have, but they were talking during the SLAS Europe in the panel, like what programs are in the universities, what universities have something that is specifically focused on life science and laboratory automation, and there's not many, but there are some, and I think to maybe have some of those programs evaluated a little bit more and share it with the community, because this is a community that I find, like with Jeff, we always talk about the community, and it's because we need to share and bring information to each other that it can be valuable. Maybe we don't need it at this moment, but someone else in our network will be able to use it. So I really want to see that kind of information shared between us here and some in other networks as well.
I think one of the big problems is the classic engineering disciplines don't have visibility or even know that engineering exists in these spaces, in life science in general. They think, oh, those guys are biologists, those guys are chemists, that's what they do. We don't know there's automation in there until someone steps into the building and you're like, wait, that robot is doing what? Where'd this come from? It's only been around for 20 plus years, or longer at this point. It's just the classic disciplines don't know that this exists. That's part of the problem, the first hurdle.
Well, it's like a default future question, right? If I go into a manufacturing facility, there's going to be a default mindset of, say, we're going to automate this process. There's a certain group of people that are going to be called in to do that, right? With a skill set, right? And I don't think it's always the case in our industry. Very, very often, right? Especially when you're talking robots, right? Where robots are part of the default future. More often you have the skill set. But I mean, I think just when you just go back to the actual chemistry side of it, because I've seen this more and more as I get into the analytical side of the industry, where you're just talking about usually one or two instruments that are connected together. It's not a huge workflow, because in the analytical space, even the vessel used for the analysis varies from one instrument to the next so quickly. I mean, you're walking down one aisle of Pitcon and you've seen 10 different vessels or 100 different vessels for whatever you're storing your sample in, just because it's unique to the process. Some are crucibles, right? Some are not even made out of plastic, or made out of ceramic or metal. LCs just to begin with, right? How an LC takes a sample and ingests a sample. You can get it out of a microtiter plate, but you need front end automation to do that. And that is really a space where the default look at automation is so different from what we think. I mean, it's in another world.
Yeah. But that reminds me of something in terms of our resumes don't tell anyone about what our capabilities are, right? Because there's just so much that goes into what we put as a one-liner of automated, mammalian cell line development. Not really. You have so many other things that go with that. So it's interesting. It's almost like you have to bring your reputation into your interview because your resume doesn't speak for itself, which means algorithms will miss it, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's this whole pipetting instrument I had to make work to make this thing, but that doesn't get captured, right? There's this whole
on the floor,
workflow,
crawling over it to make it
right.
Yeah.
But did you program a PLC to do it? No, I didn't have to. It's computer controlled.
But the algorithm is looking for that,
Right,
so
exactly.
That's a whole other episode, Mike.
Yeah,
we're getting so many episodes out of this one episode.
I have no doubt we're going to end up with more episodes per episode generated. So it'll just be this continually expanding. We never need to come up with a new episode idea again. We'll have a queue.
We just
so
need
far
a name,
backlogged.
though. That's the problem.
Use the comment section if you have an idea for a name. We're more than happy to field names. Otherwise, we're going with 4 founders. And we will. That was a comment I made earlier about picks of the week. That will sometimes be a segment of the show in the future for future episodes, and it'll be an opportunity to even dive into little technologies that help us out every day. In fact, this is it's not going to be. I'm not going to do a whole thing on it, but this is one that I recently got a ton of use out of. It's just a simple iPad compatible hub. That'll do video, Ethernet. I've connected this to robots. I've got memory cards out of cameras, and you can connect. Yeah, it's just things like that. Examples of just one of many possibilities for the pick of the week. But I think
in the comment section below.
That's right.
Oh, don't forget to smash that subscribe button.
Smash
that like button.
Exactly. 2 thumbs up.
Full on Incredible Hulk smash that button. Not responsible for screen damage. Just to stay with the popular phrase, smash that like button. And or smash the bell, hit the like button, whichever it is. I think that's a good stopping point, everyone. What do you think? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we are. I think we. For all of us, we're looking forward to future episodes. And thank you for joining us on this first episode of the Unnamed Podcast, which will come up with a name, put it into iTunes. So, thank you very much. And that's a wrap.